The rainy day was coming to an end, and Erica, a young female cab driver, was driving to her last order. She was already tired, her back ached, and her eyes hurt from the constant strain. But Erica was not discouraged, because her earnings for the day were decent. However, she still felt nervous, as she had dealt with a variety of passengers throughout the day, including 3 late passengers to the train station, drunken men from the bar who sang songs in the cab, mothers with small children, and teenagers in love. Now, Erica was on her way to pick up an elderly woman to take her to the specified address. When the woman arrived at the place, she saw an old, shabby house in front of her. Although it was once a beautiful building, the paint had peeled off, and the shutters on the windows were skewed and rusted. The area around the house was also overgrown with weeds and wild grapes, indicating that no one had taken care of it for a long time. As time passed, no one came out of the house. Erica began to worry, as no one would pay for a false call, and a lot of gasoline was spent to get to the outskirts of the city. She honked a couple of times and began to drum nervously on the steering wheel with her fingers. Finally, the door creaked open, and an old woman came out on the threshold. She was gaunt and wrinkled, and looked no less than 80 years old. She was dressed poorly, with an old, shabby coat, out of season, and a thin shawl. The elderly woman dragged behind her a rather bulky suitcase. Erica immediately jumped out of the cabin and helped the woman load the suitcase into the trunk. "I'm so embarrassed in front of you," the elderly woman apologized. "Please forgive me for making you wait. I was working, so I didn't keep track of the time." Erica smiled encouragingly and said, "It's nothing, don't worry. Everything is all right. Sit down, buckle up and let's go. So now I'll lay out the route on the navigator, on the bypass. Perhaps we'll skip all the traffic jams, so it will be faster." Suddenly, the old lady asked, "Sweetheart, can I ask you to go through the city, through the centre? I've been a recluse for many years. My health doesn't allow me to go far from home, and I'd like to see what our city has become. I'll pay extra if you need it. By the way, my name is Mrs. Manns, and yours?" "I'm Erica," the girl replied. "Nice to meet you. No problem. As you say, I'll take you through the centre at a leisurely pace. That's not difficult for me." So they started on their way. Mrs. Manns admired the beauty outside and reminisced about the past. "Oh, look at the modern buildings," she exclaimed. "There used to be a dress shop here, I remember, and now they have built a restaurant. What is this huge miracle, flashing lights like a Christmas tree? How many floors are there? I can't even count." "This is a new shopping centre where you can buy anything you want. There is a movie theatre, and there is a cafe, and there are a lot of children's attractions," Erica informed her. The elderly woman continued to recall, "When we were young, my husband and I liked to take evening walks along the streets, through this park. Young people always gathered near the main square and made dates with each other. There was also a summer dance floor there. Ah, those were the days. I worked in the court as a secretary, and Bill was a teacher. He taught math at school. My husband's hands were golden. He built our house himself, and we did everything together. We didn't have children for a long time. God didn't give them to us, and then Cindy was born. How happy we were. Words can't describe. I never imagined that I would be alone in my old age." The elderly lady sighed, and Erica cautiously clarified, "So, what about your daughter? Where is she now?" Mrs. Manns wiped away a tear and said, "Oh, it's a long story, Erica. She had an unhappy love affair and disappeared. She renounced us and quarrelled with her father. We never saw each other again. Oh my goodness, look, what a beautiful church. Saying this, the elderly woman turned to Erica and asked, And you, my dear? How did you get into such a difficult profession? It doesn't seem to be a woman's business. It's the first time I've seen a woman behind the wheel, to be honest. Erica waved her hand dismissively and replied, Well, Mrs. Mans, life happens that way. I was left without parents. My mum died when I was 8, and I grew up in an orphanage. When I fell in love, got pregnant, and Gregor turned out to be a scoundrel. He left me as soon as he found me, afraid of taking responsibility, so I was left pregnant and alone. As for cars, I've loved them since I was a kid, so I learned to drive. I enjoy it, and they pay me good money. Mrs. Mans shook her head sympathetically and said, So you're not just a female taxi driver, but also a pregnant taxi driver. Poor you, my sorrowful one. It will be difficult to take care of a newborn alone. Is there no one to help you? Erica just smirked and replied, I'm used to it. I'll manage. I'll save up money for the baby and childbirth. Besides, my profession will always provide for me. As they arrived at their destination, a grey public building with a high fence, Erica read the name on the gate and gasped. It was a nursing home. She felt unbearably sorry for the poor elderly lady who was forced by loneliness and illness to move there. Erica turned off the car and helped Mrs. Mans out. Then Erica took out her suitcase and brought it to the gate. The elderly woman lowered her head and said, All right, Erica, this is my final stop. I'm here forever. The only good thing is that I won't be here long because I'm so sick. Goodbye, my dear. Take care of yourself and your baby, and never push him away from you, no matter what happens, so as not to be like me, unneeded by anyone. The girl's heart snapped, and tears came to her eyes. She hugged the old woman and whispered, Mrs. Mans, can I visit you? The woman only waved her hand and said, Go away, never mind, you have your own worries. The woman began to take out a worn purse to pay, but Erica waved her hands and said, No, no, put it away. I will not take money from you. Good day to you. She quickly got into the car and drove away, so as not to hurt her soul even more. In the evening, after a quick snack and a shower, the girl finally stretched out her swollen legs and hoped to sleep, but she couldn't. Before her eyes stood the unhappy Mrs. Mans, waving goodbye to her. Lord, how pitiful for her. Tears are coming to my eyes. A pleasant, intelligent woman, and she was left all alone. What a daughter she has who has completely forgotten her mother. It's incomprehensible. Erica closed her eyes and began to go over the fragments of her unhappy childhood. Erica's mother had died very early. Despite this, the period spent with her was the best of her life. Her mother's name was Cindy, and she worked as a cleaner in a roadside cafe. She was always exhausted to the limit. In addition, the hated stepfather significantly poisoned their lives. Tom drank, debauched, called Erica an alien brat, and beat her mercilessly. The mother felt sorry for the girl and tried to protect her. The house was always tense with an agitated atmosphere. Cindy tried to pamper her daughter, secretly buying her sweets and toys so that her husband would not see. Erica begged for 100 times to divorce this sadist, crying, Mummy, let's leave him, please. He's bad. He does not love us. I'm afraid of him. Why do we live with him? The tormented woman only cried quietly and stroked the head of her child. I know, my daughter, that Tom is not good, but we have nowhere to go. This is his home. Your mum is unlucky. I got involved with a scoundrel and everything went wrong. So you'll have to put up with it. We can't go nowhere. And then her mum died unexpectedly from a heart attack while at work. Her stepfather buried her, but his little stepdaughter was like a thorn in his side. The girl tried to stay out of his sight and would sometimes quietly hide under the bed to avoid being noticed by the drunken stepfather. Her life became unbearable as he continuously oppressed and abused her, calling her a sponger and a freeloader. Normal sleep and studying were out of the question. She often sought refuge with the neighbours from the tyrant until they finally called the guardianship service. Erica was immediately taken to an orphanage, and her stepfather was glad to be rid of her. In the orphanage, Erica had to fight to stand up for herself and was punished repeatedly for that. Over the years, she became a tough girl who loved cars and would confidently race on an old moped that the janitor, Mr. Collins, sometimes allowed her to use. The boys respected her, considered her a good friend, and taught her how to understand spare parts and rebuild the engine. Her appearance was also consistent with her character: a short haircut, sneakers, and a leather jacket. Nevertheless, Erica's face was beautiful, with deep brown eyes, plump lips, and dimples on her cheeks. Her smile was also charismatic. Many guys admired this brave and courageous girl, who could easily change the spark plugs and rebuild the carburetor. When the educators informed Erica that her stepfather had died in a drunken rage, she did not feel 1/100th of a fraction of sympathy for him. She even rejoiced that he was no longer on earth. After all, if not for his terrible attitude towards his mother, perhaps she would still be alive. She had been constantly on edge, and no heart could withstand such stress. After graduating from the orphanage, Erica was assigned a cramped, tiny apartment in an old building. At first, she was very upset. The sight was appalling: holes in the walls, hordes of cockroaches, shabby wallpaper, and broken chairs. However, it was not in Erica's character to give up. She did not sit idly by, and thanks to her friends, fixed it up. She plastered the walls, filled the holes with putty, and pasted fresh wallpaper. It became bearable to live there. Erica passed her driver's license exams for the first time. Then she got her driver's license and went to look for a job. It was difficult for her as a girl without driving experience. No one wanted to hire her. Finally, she was lucky enough to get a job as a driver forwarder for a small company. The woman owner cheerfully winked at her and said, "There is no such thing on earth that women can't handle." Erica turned out to be an excellent driver and always kept the car in good working order. Customers were satisfied, but the salary was not enough. Therefore, Erica decided to try herself as a cab driver. Among the driving community, there was a rumour that cab drivers earn good money and tips, but it is also hard work that not everyone can handle. At first, Mr. Robbins, the owner of the taxi park, laughed at the stubby, daring girl with a short haircut. Then he said, "Now, I'll give you a little exam. If you pass, I'll take you on, and if not, don't be sorry." He made an improvised obstacle course for her with other cab drivers. They laid out old tyres on the road in the form of a snake and opened a narrow garage. The satisfied owner commanded, "There, 3 laps on this route, then turn around and drive backward into the garage. You've got 5 minutes to do it all. Keep in mind the transmission is manual. Your time is up." Half of the taxi park gathered around to watch this spectacle. Every second driver thought to himself, "Yes, I would hardly cope. The path is too cool, and it's difficult to go into the garage without proper skill. There are only a couple of centimetres on the sides." However, Erica surprised them all by passing the exam with flying colours. The cab drivers thought that the girl would be confused and unable to pass the test, but that was not the case. Erica easily jumped into an old Ford, smiled, and without a single mistake completed the task. She impressed all the men. Even Mr. Robbins opened his mouth and scratched the back of his head. "Yes, well done. A deal is a deal. I'll hire you. But beware, There are few new cars. As a trainee, I'll assign you a fairly old one, and you can drive it as you wish. But you'll be responsible for any repairs. My drivers get under the hood by themselves. There's a car mechanic on duty, but he can't cover all of them. All right, I'll see you at 8 for your shift on Monday. But I don't think you'll last long. We've never had women here before." At first, the men coaxed the dispatcher, and Erica was given the most problematic orders, such as transportation of drunken people or nervous, hysterical ladies with whom it was impossible to negotiate. Or, for example, she could be sent to the suburbs at night. Everyone was waiting for this stubborn girl to give up, break down, and leave the cab service. But all in vain. Erica did not complain about anything. Moreover, it was obvious that this work was her pleasure. The old car often failed, but the breakdowns did not stop Erica. She always rolled up her sleeves like a man and dug under the hood, often staying at work much longer than she should. As a result, she gained the respect of her colleagues, and they tried to help to support her. And if they made jokes, it was in a kind way, more for laughs, without any malicious intent. So the girl worked as a cab driver for 3 years without tiring. And 6 months ago, Erica's friends decided to make her a birthday present and invited her to a bikers meeting. They knew that Erica would be delighted, and this was better than any present for her. Indeed, she was fascinated by the show. Powerful motorcycles, brutal men with thick beards in leather jackets and black jeans, looking like real Vikings. It was there that she met Gregor. He too was among the invited spectators. The young people quickly found a common language and became friends. Erica immediately liked Gregor, a strong, muscular, confident man. He was a volleyball coach, and motorcycles were his hobby and passion. Gregor almost immediately liked the girl, especially when she dashingly made a couple of laps on the bike. Young people began to meet, and romance erupted, stormy and passionate. Erica was not initially bothered that Gregor did not offer her anything serious. They just loved each other and enjoyed life to the fullest. What's the hurry? They could rent a motorcycle and ride around the city all night in the wind. Erica generally loved freedom, speed, and extremes. At such moments, adrenaline was off the charts, and it seemed like happiness. They loved each other passionately and fiercely, and each time was like the last. Everything burst like a soap bubble instantly when Erica realized she was pregnant. Gregor did not swear or shout. He just shamefully disappeared from the horizon, did not pick up the phone, and pretended not to know her when they met. Not only that, he immediately found a replacement for Erica, a rich girl. Erica saw with her own eyes how her ex-lover was kissing another woman in front of everyone, and it became clear to her that everything was over between them. Erica was so bitter, hurt and scared that she even considered doing something rash at first. She recalled her joyless childhood and how her mother could not manage alone. She realized that she had nowhere to turn for help as well. So why start down this path? To condemn the child to a life of agony? Erica even went to the clinic and signed up for the termination, but the day before, an incredible event forced her to radically change her mind. Erica was giving a ride to a passenger. Judging by her colourful scarf and long dress, she was a gypsy. As the woman was getting out of the car, she touched Erica's palm and said, looking intently into her eyes, "Everything will be all right, my dear. Don't be sad. A son will be born, and then a daughter. You won't have to wait long. Your happiness is already on your doorstep." The woman left the car, and Erica kept sitting there, frozen as if she were a statue. It cannot be said that the girl unconditionally believed the gypsy. She was not of that character, but nevertheless she did not go to the clinic and kept the child. She firmly decided that she would raise him herself, without any scoundrels like Gregor, or even worse, nasty stepfathers. After she made the decision, it became much easier for her. She had a goal to earn as much as possible so that it would be enough for the first time to sit with the child until he went to daycare. So she worked hard and did not spare herself. She had no toxicosis at all, but her back often ached and her legs swelled a little from sitting for long periods of time. Mrs. Manns was also on her mind, and one day Erica thought, I should visit her. It won't cost me anything, and it will be nice for the elderly woman. She must be sad and lonely there. Erica understood better than anyone how bad it was in such places, even if they fed and clothed her. The next day she took an hour out of her schedule, bought a nice bouquet of flowers and some fruit, and went to see the old woman. Mrs. Manns was so happy to see her that she burst into tears. She hugged the girl as if she were her own granddaughter and said, Thank you, Erica. You have a kind heart. You didn't forget the old woman. It's so sad here. Everything's so strange. At home the walls healed me, but here it's a pity I have no health left at all. I can't eat properly. My hands are shaking. I spill everything on myself. They chatted a little and Erica went back to work, but the happy Mrs. Manns did not let go of the bouquet of flowers until nightfall, sitting dreamily by the window. From that day on, Erica visited Mrs. Manns almost every day for a little while, and on weekends she could stay with her for half a day. The girl noticed that it was cold in the ward and brought warm woolen socks and a shawl to Mrs. Manns. The elderly woman was touched by such care and began to call Erica her granddaughter. Every day they grew closer to each other. They would sit in the park of the boarding house for a long time and talk to each other. They often crumbled a loaf and fed the pigeons, who enjoyed their treats. One day Erica asked the old woman for advice on caring for the baby, and Mrs. Manns shared her wisdom and personal life details. I look at you, Erica. You look so much like Cindy, my daughter. I loved her so much. Who would have thought it would turn out like this? She was smart, she studied well, and we had such high hopes for her with my husband. Where did that ugly foreigner come from? Arthur, damn him, he made my girl's head spin, and just imagine, he was married. Cindy couldn't resist, she went on a wild spree. Soon, as if by bad luck, she got pregnant. When my husband found out, it was such a scandal. He said she disgraced our family and brought shame upon us. That scoundrel denied everything and almost immediately disappeared. He said, I don't know anything. It's not my child. Who knows from whom your daughter got pregnant? Cindy was mortally offended by us for going to him to find out the truth, and she left after him. That's the whole story. I haven't heard a word from her anymore. Where is she? How does she live? I don't know anything. 100 times we regretted scolding her. We should have accepted her. We could have raised a grandson together and forgotten everything in time. She's not the first and she's not the last. So don't even think about regretting the baby. Love him, raise him, and the most important thing is that you're together. When he grows up, there will be someone to give you a glass of water in your old age. 3 months had flown by. It was the day off, and Erica had been in the kitchen since the morning. Though she didn't know how to cook, Erica tried to make sure the cutlets wouldn't burn. She wanted to treat Mrs. Manns to something homemade. Suddenly the phone rang. Erica Clark, it's from the nursing home. Mrs. Manns gave us your number yesterday. She suddenly felt bad and unfortunately died during the night. Please accept our condolences. Who will take care of the funeral? Does she have at least distant relatives? Erica silently hung up the phone, unable to answer. She sobbed and felt terrible, as if she had really lost her grandmother. Without hesitation, she spent the money she had so scrupulously saved for the birth to take the old woman on her last journey, as befitted. Her conscience was clear. Erica was especially touched by the dried flowers from her bouquet, lovingly placed between the pages of Mrs. Mann's prayer book, which was given to her by the nurse. To avoid being so dreary, Erica went to work, taxiing day and night, until Mr. Robbins literally chased her to maternity leave. "Erica Clark, are you completely out of your mind? Or maybe you've decided to give birth right at the workplace? Stop it and go on maternity leave for good, or we'll have to deliver the baby. Don't worry, we'll always find a place for you when the baby grows up. We need people like you." So Erica had to go on maternity leave. The very next day, a notary, a middle-aged man with a folder in his hands, suddenly came to her home. What he told the woman shocked her. It turned out that Mrs. Mann's had left a will and signed over her house to Erica. Along with the will, he gave her a letter. "I've been instructed to hand this to you personally. Here are the keys and documents. Now you are the rightful owner of the house. Congratulations. Excuse me, I have to go. I have a lot to do. Goodbye." The bewildered Erica sat down in an armchair, opened the letter with shaky hands and began to read it. "Dear Erica, it so happens that you have recently become the closest and dearest person to me. You can't even imagine how important and necessary your visits were to me. It is so warming to know that someone needs you. Thank you for your kind heart, nice presents, and heartfelt conversations. You just warmed up my senile soul, frozen from loneliness and indifference. So the least I can thank you is my old house. I hope you will not sell it for nothing, but restore it and live in it with your child. I would like that very much. It has a piece of my soul in it. And I'll also give you a piece of advice. If you want to heat the fireplace in the fall, don't be rushing and take a good look at it. Goodbye, darling. I'll give you a big hug. Take care of yourself and the baby. Sincerely loving you, Mrs. Mann's." Erica wept quietly and remembered the elderly woman's dry hands and eyes full of inexpressible longing. Active innately, Erica, despite the impressive term of her pregnancy, decided to move into Mrs. Mann's house and slowly put it in order. She had nothing to do in the four walls of a tiny apartment, and the baby would be better in his own yard, in the fresh air. Erica took a cab and moved all her things to her new home. In fact, the woman was terrified about the future. She didn't have much money, and there were such expenses ahead. How could she get rid of it? But as much as she tried to think of a solution, nothing useful came to mind. To keep her mind clear of bad thoughts, Erica started a general cleaning, slowly dismantled cabinets and shelves and put things in order. She found an old gramophone on the mezzanine and a bunch of records, and she enjoyed the works of Bach and Beethoven. For her, it was all so unusual and interesting. In the old lady's closet, Erica found a gorgeous turquoise-coloured lace dress and guessed it was Mrs. Mann's daughter's, who had disappeared somewhere. Probably Mrs. Mann's had cherished it all her long life as a reminder of her daughter. The house turned out to be quite spacious, and it was filled with the spirit of antiquity, and it was clear that Mrs. Mann's husband had a talent for design and golden hands. Everything was done with quality and conscientiousness, and only minor restoration was needed despite the house being decades old. Erica decided to convert one of the rooms into a nursery and began to renovate it. Paul, one of the cab drivers from Erica's work, offered to help her. They had recently become good friends. The man had divorced for a year because his wife left him for a lover, so he never hurried home. They often repaired cars together or just talked. And now, helping with repairs, Paul watched Erica dashingly roll out wallpaper, climbing on a stepladder and supervising the process. She was so funny, wearing a kerchief and a striped blouse. Her belly stuck out funny, looking like a small watermelon. Paul sincerely admired that restless and active woman.
Erica, I'm amazed at you. Where do you get all this energy? My ex-wife used to get tired just doing the dishes.
But you're like an airplane, running around the house, repairing, and you're pregnant. Good for you. In fact, Paul had long been in love with Erica, even when he first saw this daring young beauty, who dashingly raced in an old Ford at the driving test. He liked everything about her: her angularity, straightforwardness, diligence and charisma. But he couldn't confess his feelings, especially when he learned that Erica was pregnant and her boyfriend had left her. He didn't want to intrude on her feelings. He realized that it was not the right time, and she wouldn't understand. It was hard enough as it was. So he decided to be there for her as a best friend and let time show what would happen. Meanwhile, Erica did not notice his fiery feelings, as she did not care about them. Days went by and it was getting colder, so one day Erica decided to make a fireplace. "Paul, could you bring a couple of piles of firewood and let's try to light it up? Maybe before winter comes. I should call a chimney sweep if there are any problems." While Paul worked outside with the wood, a restless Erica couldn't stay still. She climbed inside the fireplace with a flashlight, despite her huge belly, to check if it had crumbled from old age. Suddenly she found an object and began to pull it. Eventually she fell to the floor, along with a pile of dust and soot, and began to sneeze. But curiosity got the better of her, and she immediately began to unwrap the mysterious package. It was a box. She opened it and gasped. There were all sorts of jewellery there, gold chains, bracelets and stones, and gold coins. Erica shrieked. "Oh my goodness! There's a fortune here! This is a gift from Mrs. Manns. So that's what those words in the letter about the fireplace were about. And I was a fool and forgot about them immediately." At the very bottom, in a cellophane bag, were old black and white photos. Erica looked through the pictures. Here was Mrs. Manns, and this was apparently her husband. Here they were together. But who was this? Oh, it can't be. It says it's her daughter, Cindy. But that's my mother. I remember her well. How can that be? There can only be one explanation. Mrs. Manns is my grandmother, and I'm her granddaughter. And my mother is her daughter, Cindy, about whom she spoke with such warmth. Unbelievable. Paul entered the house and froze on the threshold. Erica was sitting, grimy as a little houseboy, right on the cold floor and crying, not noticing anything around her. She was clutching some photos and swaying from side to side. A jewellery box was lying next to her. A frightened man ran up to Erica and began to shake her, trying to lift her up and shake her off. "God, Erica, did you fall? Why did you go up there yourself? You're restless. I would have helped. You can't sit in the cold. What's the matter with you? Where did you get all this stuff?" But the woman didn't hear him and only whispered, "Mummy, that's my mummy. Do you understand? Mrs. Manns, who I took care of before she died, turned out to be my grandmother. I just found out now." Paul was confused and didn't know what to think. He had never seen Erica like this before. Erica was in such a state that Paul thought, maybe she's delirious. Did she hit her head? Or is it during pregnancy that this happens? It's hard to understand these women. He went to the kitchen and after a minute, he brought Erica a glass of water. "Here, drink it and calm down. And tell me everything is in order, otherwise I'll think you've gone crazy." Soon Erica finally came to her senses and began to tell Paul the whole story, from the beginning. Now it was the man's turn to be surprised. What a plot!
It's time to make a TV series. He whistled. Wow, Erica, so you're a rich heiress now. Congratulations. What will you do with such money? Will you sell the house or keep it? The woman twisted her head and replied, No way. This is my family nest, as it turns out. My roots are here. My grandparents lived here, and my mum grew up here. Besides, my grandfather built it with his own hands, and he put his heart and soul into it. I want to restore everything, but leave it as it was originally planned. Now I'll live here, and then my children. I'll donate some of the money to the nursing home. After all, no matter how you look at it, they really do a good deed and help alleviate the suffering of the elderly in their last days of life. And they don't have enough funding. I saw everything with my own eyes. I also dream of a new car, and I need to put aside a lot for childbirth. In general, my head is spinning with all this. I have not yet come to my senses. Paul suddenly looked intently at her and said, You know what, Erica? Marry me. I've been loving you for a long time. You'll give birth to a boy, and we'll live like everyone else. I'm all alone after my divorce without a family. All day long I'm either spinning the steering wheel or getting bored in an empty apartment. Erica suddenly jumped up and down and exclaimed, Paul, it's no joke. I'm carrying someone else's child, not yours. Are you sure you can accept, love and raise him as your own? That's just it. Do you know how I grew up? Shall I tell you? I was beaten and abused so badly by my stepfather that I was taken from him to the orphanage. He never called me anything but a little brat. I hated him so fiercely that when I heard from the nurses that he had been drunk and burned alive, I didn't feel sorry for him one bit. Can you imagine? I'm so sorry. But no, I don't want my baby to have that kind of childhood. And I'll tell you more. I'm not my mum, and I'll smack anyone who hurts my child. And that's the end of it. I have to live alone for the rest of my life. And let's end this conversation. Or do you want to propose to me out of the blue because of money? I do not understand. What's the catch? Paul was deeply offended and turned pale. He stammered, Why do you judge everyone by one person? You shouldn't do that. Can't you see how hard I'm trying to make you notice that I love you? What does your money have to do with me and my feelings? What the hell are you talking about? Just say so if you don't like me. You've turned me into a sadist and a greedy demon. You can live like you want, with your obnoxious temper, as you wish. Erica struck a pose and pointed to the door, saying, Okay, thank you for your help. Have a good day. I won't keep you any longer. Paul bulged his eyes and also shouted, Have a nice stay. And so they parted, shattered to pieces, when only an hour ago they were peacefully gluing wallpaper. Erica fell tiredly onto the sofa. She was angry. Well, let him roll. We'll live on our own, won't we, Sonny? We don't need anyone. These men are nothing but trouble. She stroked her stomach and felt better. The unbearable longing receded, and Erica went through the pictures she had found inside the fireplace. Her mother was so young and happy in the pictures. Mummy, how could it be? You had such great parents. Why did you break up with them forever? Yeah, the grandfather looks like a strict and serious man. It's clear that there was no fun with him. Erica clutched these pictures as the most precious thing she had, and in fact they were pieces of her family's history. A couple of days later, Erica actively began to fulfill her wishes and sincerely thanked her grandmother for her generous gift. She transferred a decent sum to the account of the nursing home and bought a new car. She hired specialists, and they started restoring and repairing the house according to her personal sketches. But the closer her due date approached, the harder it became for her to focus. Erica became clumsy, and it was harder and harder for her to get up in the morning. And most importantly, no matter what she was doing, her thoughts still returned to Paul. She had already regretted many times that she had treated him so harshly, insulted him, and offended him for no reason. Because in reality, he had helped her so much. And if you put your hand on your heart, she really liked him, in the depths of her heart. Her sadistic stepfather and Gregor's despicable act had completely discouraged her from letting any man into her soul. She had built a brick wall around herself and panicked at the thought of being offended, deceived, or betrayed again. Paul also missed Erica. This bold and self-sufficient woman had fallen deep into his heart. He realized with his mind that in many ways she was right and he had chosen the wrong moment, as if on purpose. Taking responsibility for someone else's baby was a complicated matter, but he was ready to try, to make every effort to accept and love this little man who was about to be born. But unfortunately, she didn't even want to listen to him, and still, no matter how angry he was with her, his heart wanted to go where she was. He was worried because the birth was coming, and Erica was all alone in the house. How would she cope? Anything could happen, right? Many times he had looked at the cherished number in the phone book, but he never called. One day, while Paul was reassembling a car in the garage, he overheard other drivers' conversations. "Have you heard, men? Our Erica gave birth yesterday. A boy. Mr. Robbins was told about it by an acquaintance. We should get together and congratulate her properly. She's a good girl." Paul's stomach turned upside down. He threw the nuts and wrenches away and ran to wash up. Then he bought a bouquet of beautiful roses, all sorts of goodies, and rushed to the maternity hospital. On the way he thought, "To hell with this stupid pride. I'll try to declare my love for her again. Whatever happens, I'll congratulate her at the same time." He resented them for a long time in the lobby, wondering why they did not want to let him see Erica. He persuaded them this way and that, and finally he managed to beg the nurse to see Erica at least for a minute. Erica was lying in the ward preparing to feed when a nurse came in and whispered to her, "There, your husband is too active. He tortured me with a request to see you. Now is not the time to visit, but as an exception, as long as there are no bosses, just a couple of minutes. Otherwise I'll be punished." Erica was stunned, her heart fluttering. Did Paul forgive me? Is he angry? Before she could think of anything more, Paul opened the door, scooped her up in an armful, and kissed her tenderly. Then he handed her a bouquet and a bag of fruit and blurted out, "Congratulations, Erica, now you won't get rid of me for nothing. Marry me. I swear I'll love your child like my own. You'll never regret your choice. I can't live without you, even though your temper is unbearable and you're not a good cook. I can't eat pancakes and cutlets, but I still love you." Erica laughed and replied, "Well, you're really something, Paul. But yes, I agree, and please forgive me. I said a lot of unnecessary and terrible things to you then, and I regret it very much. It's just hard for me to learn to trust men again. It has nothing to do with you. I really like you too, honestly, but I was afraid to admit it to myself. Well, you need to go now, or they'll scold us." "Wait," said Paul with a happy smile. "What are we going to name our son? Mind you, I'll put him in my surname, as it should be. You're mine, and his mine. That's it." Erica realized that with such a man she would not be lost, and happily replied, "We will call him Martin. Run, Daddy. We'll be discharged in a couple of days." Immediately after discharge from the hospital, Paul and Erica got married and began to live at Mrs. Mann's house. The wedding was celebrated at home in a small circle. The whole taxi fleet was gathered,
Mr. Robbins made beautiful toasts, and everyone wished happiness to the young family. At the height of the fun, the baby woke up, and a crying came from the nursery. Erica immediately ran to the child. She was not there for quite a long time. Paul hesitated. Shall I go or not? He was afraid to hold the baby, fearing he might do something wrong. The man took a deep breath, composed himself and entered the nursery. He stood quietly on the threshold, watching Erica feed Martin. He was amazed at the transformation that had taken place in his wife. Before him sat not an angular, boyish girl in a fancy leather jacket, but a tender and loving mother whose eyes radiated happiness. Pregnancy and childbirth went in Erica's favour. She became feminine and serene. The baby finished feeding and began to twist and wrinkle adorably, moving his lips. Paul asked quietly, "Can I hold him?" Erica smiled, nodded, and carefully handed the baby to him. The man's hands trembled with fear as he stroked the baby's cheeks and nose and rocked him gently. Martin fell silent and closed his eyes, falling asleep. Paul returned him to the crib and whispered, "Sleep, my son. Daddy is here and won't let anyone hurt you." Erica hugged Paul and whispered, "Thank you for being with me, Paul. It's so wonderful. Everything will work out for us. At least, I will try very hard." As they returned to their guests, the tipsy Mr. Robbins immediately shouted, "Cheers!" Paul hissed at him, "Shh, shh, shh. You'll wake my son. He just fell asleep." Mr. Robbins tempered his enthusiasm and said more calmly, "Well done, Paul. You're a real man. I respect you, and I wish happiness to your family." At first it wasn't easy. Paul and Erica had no experience with the baby. They didn't sleep well and they sometimes quarrelled. But at the same time, Paul, more and more often, caught himself thinking that he loved the baby truly, as a native son. Now he hurried home from work and always bought Erica a present, even if it was a chocolate bar or a small bouquet. He loved to see her happy and hugging him. And Erica, kissing her husband goodnight, often thought, no matter what anyone says, being on the same wavelength with men is fun and interesting, but being a beloved woman in the hands of a strong and reliable man is much better. Now she knew for sure that she could not find a better father and husband.